and they satisfy the probing mind of the academic, who is strongly oriented to such American values as tolerance, combating discrimination, and working to lessen the moral boundaries. Now, you should know that a majority of psychiatrists internationally still regard homosexuality as a developmental disorder. It is a disorder that lacks the capacity to deliver the health and the wholeness usually found in heterosexuality. Though many gays are able to cope valiantly with this disorder and able to operate, if functionality is a basis for determining health, they're normal, they're creative, and they operate well. However, the orientation, well documented by recent studies, is associated with a number of personal difficulties. Let me talk about my second concern, and that has to do with the wide resistance to reorientation therapy. Lutherans' Concern, for instance, is circulating a video among Lutheran congregations entitled, "Is Ex-Gay a False Hope?" The purpose of the video is to convince church members that such therapy is ineffective and that change is a figment of the imagination. Why the strong opposition when such therapy is made available only to those requesting it? And why is the witness of thousands of ex-gays being ignored? One obvious reason is this. If it can be demonstrated that some people do change their orientation, it puts a lie to the idea that everyone is born a homosexual. Consider for a moment the scientific discussion of this question. The claim, quote, "There's no scientific evidence that reparative therapy is effective," end of quote, is being made by many responsible people. Because this claim is being presented to people in congregations through this Lutherans' Concern video, it bears further scrutiny. So let's begin by just simply noting how studies are carried out by scientists. Professor Stephen Hawking, the renowned theoretical physicist, gives the following account of how scientific inquiry is conducted. A good theory will describe a large range of phenomena on the basis of a few simple postulates and will make definite predictions that can be tested. If the predictions agree with the observations, the theory survives that test, though it can never be proved to be correct. On the other hand, if the observations disagree with the predictions, one has to discard or modify the theory. At least that is what is supposed to happen. In practice, people often question the accuracy of the observations and the reliability and the moral character of those making those observations. Now, notice how scientific inquiry proceeds. There's a presentation of a theoretical statement or a hypothesis which can then be tested. Evidence is then summoned to support either the acceptance or the rejection of the hypothesis. Note also that evidence which supports the hypothesis does not prove that it's correct. It only strengthens the likelihood that what is proposed squares with reality. Thus, the scientist can begin with a hypothesis such as, change from homosexuality to heterosexuality is possible for some. Now that's the necessary first step. That hypothesis can then be tested by marshaling evidence through survey findings, the results of interviews, carefully controlled experiments, and the like, which make data available. Now granted, the evidence that's used may vary in reliability, and we're familiar with the idea of reliability, having noted how attentive FBI agents are to the reliability of information and purported terrorist activities. They examine for reliability and then decide on what should be believed. Now the grading well, so that's that. The grading of the strength or reliability of evidence from a study is commonly done in the medical sciences, such as the Institute for Clinical Systems Improvement. Their people evaluate the strength of the evidence on the basis of the study's design, its sample size, its patient population, and things such as that. And so the study then is assigned one of 4 grades. Grade 1, supported by good evidence. Grade 2, supported by fair evidence. Grade 3, supported by limited evidence. And grade 4, supported only by opinion, anecdotes, and the things such as that. It's important to note that most studies reporting a degree of success with conversion therapy, as it is also called, appeared in the professional journals during the 50s, 60s, and 70s. But following the big chill in research that occurred after the decision of the American Psychiatric Association in 1973, the numbers of studies diminished rapidly due to lack of funding and the reluctance of editors to publish articles contesting the position of the APA. Warren Throckman has analyzed and reported on 83 studies on the therapeutic process of conversion therapy, all of which support the hypothesis. While some of these studies may be lacking in sophisticated methodology, and hence may be accorded grade 2 or grade 3 ranking, they nevertheless support the hypothesis that conversion therapy is effective for some people. Now, following his review, Throckmorton authored another article that required 2 years of peer review and was published just this last June in the official journal of the American Psychological Association. The article is unique in that it presents 11 studies of ex-gays which identify a religious faith as contributing to the process of changing from homosexual attractions to heterosexual ones. Throckmorton's article begins with a quote from an F. Warden, and he says, "What does ex-gay mean? It is a statement of fact. I am no longer the same. God has changed me. He is changing me, and he most certainly will continue to change me." Worthen then continues, quote, "At the New Hope Ministry, we do not attempt to make heterosexuals out of homosexuals. Rather, we attempt to change a person's identity, the way a person looks at himself. We encourage the former gay to drop the label homosexual from his life. However, we do not ask him to become dishonest about his struggle with homosexuality. He is a Christian who has a homosexual problem, rather than a homosexual who believes in Jesus Christ." Now back to the business of testing a hypothesis. When Spitzer, chair of the committee that removed homosexuality from the category of mental illness, became interested in the reversibility of homosexuality, he began interviewing persons who had been ex-gays for 5 years or more. He reported his findings at the May 2001 convention of the American Psychiatric Association. The evidence resulting from his interviews of 143 males and 57 females caused him to reject the hypothesis he'd been holding. He indicated this in the slide that read, quote, "Contrary to conventional wisdom, some highly motivated individuals using a variety of change efforts can make substantial change in multiple indicators of sexual orientation and achieve good heterosexual functioning. Subjects that made less substantial changes still believed that such changes were extremely beneficial." The results that he reported are similar to those found in a questionnaire study by Nicolosi, Beard, and Potts involving 882 ex-gays. The respondents were one who had sought help because they were dissatisfied with their orientation. And the survey showed that approximately 7 years after initiating change, 34 could report change towards heterosexuality and 43% could report much change. This evidence gives strong support to the hypothesis that reorientation is possible for some. I can identify 94 studies that support this hypothesis that reorientation is possible for some. I've yet to see a study that supports the hypothesis that reorientation is ineffective and unethical. Bishop Chisholm did send me one study, and I reported on one study, and I looked at it and I wrote back to him. I said, "This is an informal study that does not represent anything more than personal opinion."